By the time county trucks ringed the HOA's new pond with yellow tape, my kitchen faucet was coughing air, and Brenda Sloan was still smiling at me across the crowd, like she owned the sunrise. I had a single dog-eared page in my pocket from 1994 that could pull the pin on everything she'd done, and when I read it later that night, you could feel the whole room tip. You know what I mean. I live up on the ridge above Pine Hollow Bluffs, Montana, a little older than the cul-de-sacs and mailbox clusters down below. My place sits in a wind-bent stand of pines, where a cold spring breaks out of the sandstone and keeps a private promise to anyone who listens. My late wife Laura loved that spot so much. We scattered her ashes where the wildflowers thicken along the edge, and most mornings I walk the same path with a dented thermos hand, on the split rail, listening to the water and thinking quiet thoughts that don't bother anybody. The morning this started, there was a paper taped to my gate with packing tape like a shipping label. Pine Hollow Bluffs. Homeowners Association at the top. Reclamation inspection notice, in bold catchment management effective. Immediately, a language that sounds like law, even when it's just a group of neighbors with a printer. I read it twice because anger reads like static. Then I followed fresh tire tracks up the service road and heard it. Before I saw it, a backhoe with a smoker's voice chewing a trench across my line, while two guys in hard hats bolted in a bright brass diversion valve. And there she was, Brenda. Sunglasses, straw hat, clipboard, hugged to her chest like a badge. Morning community improvement day. She chirped, and I said calm, "You're on my land." And that's my line. She tapped the clipboard with a French manicure and said, "Association easement." The board voted to consolidate springs for our wellness pond. You're welcome to attend the next meeting. If you'd like to express a concern, then. To her guys, make the tie-in tight. Please, we're on a schedule. I looked at the spring behind her, steady and clear, and at the strangers wrenching my life into a new direction. And I said low, "Shut it down, pack up, take your toys off my hill." She smiled, the kind of smile that already has the email drafted. "Deadlines don't move for feelings, Mr. Avery. You'll receive a notice," and an hour later they were gone. The soil scarred a brass handle gleaming like a taunt at the clubhouse pond below, gurgling happily, while my kitchen faucet hissed and coughed, and then sagged into a sad little trickle. By night, my tank gauge sat lower than I'd seen since the 2012 drought, and the wildflowers, by the spring, drooped like someone had told them bad news. The next envelope came certified and soft, like money. $700 for retrospective unmetered usage penalties. Included neat line about a lien in 30 days. Brenda's signature, like a tiny mountain range. So I drove to the HOA office at dawn and asked to speak with her. She stepped out at 6:10 with a cup of coffee and a face set to pleasant deadlines. "Don't move for feelings." She repeated like gospel, "Yeah, that happened," and that's when I understood the shape of the fight. It wasn't water to her. It was control. Then the smaller cuts started mail slit open, like the envelope had done something wrong. The cap on my old backup, well, nudged gravel, rattling in a throat that should be clear. Footsteps on rock after midnight that went still the second my porch light touched them. And you can spend your whole life yelling at shadows, or you can measure what they're doing. Fear eats energy. And engineers don't waste, so I wiped a trail camera clean, soldered a cheap pressure sensor to a blinking LED, and set it in my bedroom window, where I could see it from the pillow. Then I tucked the camera high in a pine, overlooking the new valve, and told myself to sleep. On the third night at 2:11 a.m., the LED pulsed red like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I lay still and counted before dawn. I climbed, pulled the SD card, and walked back, with my breath making small ghosts in the cold. The first clips were deer, a raccoon, a moth with big ambitions. Then a man stepped into frame, nervous, glancing back the way he came. I recognized him from trench day, buzz cut, tired jaw. He scraped up a neat square of turf I hadn't noticed and exposed a second buried valve, put a long wrench on it, gave it a hard twist. You could see the surge in the line, even in infrared. He let it run almost an hour. Hour shut. It patted the turf like a guilty dog, burying a bone, and slid out of the frame. Only one problem for Brenda. That secret pipe wasn't headed to the pond. It ran behind the clubhouse like a fox trail, to somewhere deeper. That's not a guess, that's a locator. Walked downhill and a flow meter clamped to the stub of my original line ticking into a notebook. I pulled a battered Rolodex and called Red Rock. Water and Resources asked for hydrology. Got Dr. Celia Hart, the scientist who keeps boots under her desk and doesn't waste words. I gave her grid IDs like the old days, when stakes meant fire season and drought. Those lines should be mid-90s, she said. Give me an hour. When she called back, the casual was gone. You're right, system-wide. We're bleeding slowly. Something's pulling unauthorized volume. She filed what she could file. Then the word backlog slid across the line like a door half shut. Formal inquiry. 60 days, and I looked at my orchard browning at the tips and thought, in 60 days, a lot of things die. 2 hours later, Celia rang back with no small talk, Jack. I ran a quick model. Their tie-in is amateur. No proper backflow between that pond and the emergency line. If county pressure dips for any reason, the pond could siphon backward into the reserve fertilizer's oil, whatever lives in that water. And that's the moment everything changed, because it wasn't my spring versus a pond anymore. It was public safety. Fire tanks, clinic backups, families who think their taps are safe because they should be. You know what I mean. I called an old friend. Ben Ortiz used to run with me in the Army Corps now. An investigative reporter with a dented pickup and Pelican cases in the back. He rolled in before dark. We strapped a solar flow logger to the diversion line, dropped wireless pressure nodes at key points, and watched data tick into a receiver with an LCD that counted gallons, like a gas pump, while Ben checked signal strength, dragged open an old steel file cabinet, and found what my head had been reaching for, the Red Rock Emergency Water Trust addendum. I pushed past the legal throat clearing and found the sentence that cuts granite. Any non-essential alteration to designated emergency sources voids subordinate private claims. Stewardship reverts to the original custodian. Pending county oversight. I made 2 copies mailed, one certified to the Pine Hollow Board, Tension, Brenda, and walked the other to the Red Rock Gazette with a simple note. Ask the county about pressures, you'll want eyes on this. By the weekend, Brenda was hosting a barbecue by the pond with a ribbon on a stake and a tanker truck spraying dust, so nobody's luxury SUV caught a coat kids running. Neighbors smiling because they wanted to believe the word wellness. I stood far enough off to be nobody and thought, this is a cage built out of shortcuts. Light is going to find it. Monday's paper put us under the fold. Subdivision pond. Tied to emergency water line. Engineer says not flashy, but enough to light up phones at Celia's office and the county supervisor's desk. And when public health is on the table, the county can outvote an HOA rulebook. They ordered an open board meeting accessible to all residents to address contamination risk. Brenda tried to brand it private, but that stamp didn't stick. The clubhouse filled before sunset. Farmers in ball caps, moms with strollers, a nurse from the clinic, 2 volunteer firefighters who smelled like smoke and soap, reporters setting tripods, Ben with a cameraman whose beard had its own opinions. The big windows framed the glittering pond like it thought it was a lake. Brenda banged a little gavel and recited speaking limits like she was calling court. 3 board members flanked her with paper shields when I walked down the aisle with a poster tube under my arm and Celia at my shoulder. The color drained out of Brenda's face in a way makeup can't fix. "This is a private meeting out of order," she said into the mic. Celia didn't raise her voice. Public health jurisdiction let him speak, and the room settled into a quiet. That means people want the truth, even if it hurts. I unrolled my poster and taped it to the wall, 2 thick lines blue for the emergency reserve, red for the HOA pond, a big ugly valve between them, and a smaller secret one. "Buried just below, I'm Jack Avery," I said. "I live on the ridge, and that spring predates this subdivision. 2 months ago, the HOA tied it into a decorative pond. This is what they built." I pointed at the valve. "For months, most of our emergency backup has been siphoned away." Ben brought up a live feed from the flow logger. The number ticked gallon by gallon, and a murmur rolled like wind in wheat. "Fabricated." Brenda snapped. He doctored that he has a grudge. I didn't answer. I clicked the trail cam video timestamp. The contractor stepped in. Peeled back turf revealed the hidden valve, put the wrench on the live counter, jumped like a pulse. A woman in the back stood so fast her chair skidded. "My son's been sick for a week. Our water smells like dirt. You told us we were safe." A rancher raised his hand. Calluses visible from halfway back. Pressure dropped so low. "Sunday, I couldn't fill my stock tank. But the pond sure looks full." Board members leaned away from Brenda like she was a lit stove. Ruth Chandler, who never said much, clutched a folder like a life vest. I let the room boil a breath, then held up a single page. "This is the 1994 addendum. It isn't pretty, but it's binding." I read the one sentence, slow. "Any non-essential alteration to designated emergency sources voids subordinate private claims. Stewardship reverts to the original custodian. Pending county oversight." Then I looked at Brenda hot. "Cruel just finished. Your land use amendment is void. Your easement is void. Your fines are void." For one heartbeat. You could hear the pond outside pretending to be a river. Then a county rep I hadn't noticed stepped forward, took the mic like it belonged in his hand. Effective immediately. The Pine Hollow Bluffs. HOA will cease and desist all access to the spring and connected infrastructure. The county is assuming control pending a criminal investigation. Cameras clicked. A pen rolled off the table and cracked on tile. Brenda reached for the mic with a hand that wasn't steady. "This is a witch hunt. You people don't understand. Governance liabilities, any of it." And Ruth stood. Voice small but solid. "Brenda, sit down. You're suspended. Pending investigation security." Shifted the room. Exhaled like it had been holding its breath a month. I picked up the little gavel Brenda had been banging the cheap wood warm from pretend authority, And I met her eyes, the way she met mine on my hill. "This community doesn't belong to you anymore," I said, and set it down. That's where I leave it for now. No balloon drop. No slow motion. Hug, just yellow tape on a bad idea, and a spring that sounded a little stronger next morning. And here's the part worth arguing about, because I know some of you will say, HOAs keep neighborhoods livable, and some will say they breed small-time tyrants with clipboards. I'm not here to write the universal rule. I'm here to ask the question straight if it were your hill, and your memories in the wildflowers, and your faucet coughing air, because somebody wanted a pretty pond. Would you push for charges to make an example, or settle for suspension and apology to get neighbors talking again? Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you think is right. What's over the line? What you've seen on your block. Drop your story in the comments. Hit subscribe. If you want the next chapter, I'll bring the receipts. You bring the truth.